I was once concerned about what the narrative was speaking, what the groupthink was. But at heart, I was always a scientist, and I worried about the effects of the sun on Earth, especially as a paleoclimatology student. I studied the sun. I studied Milankovitch theory and the orbital perturbations in our solar system. And I wondered, what was the driver of climate? And I realized it was the sun. But more importantly, the magnetosphere of Earth, which protects us from the sun. This clearly is the driver of climate because it allows just the amount of sun energy to enter into the Earth system. And then I found out about the magnetic reversal and the fact that the dipole is rapidly dropping, exponentially, and increasing. And every data set confirms this, that potentially by 2050, there will be no magnetic field on Earth. Zero. And that's very bad. Now, I was educated once by university, and it's taken me almost 3 decades to get over it. I was indoctrinated partially, but I think freely now. And I created this graphic for those of you that are wondering what is going to happen. What's important to worry about? Well, you're sitting here today and wondering, and it's my opinion that you have 2 years left to stop wondering, to gather data, books, and supplies. Because as we enter solar cycle 25 max in 2025, prior to that, sometime in 2023 or 2022, the grid will start to fail worldwide, as well as financial situations, including world banks. And the banks will collapse right before the grid fails or at the same time. It could be much earlier. This is a very optimistic timeline because I'm a very optimistic person. By the time solar cycle 25 maxes, we will have an X flare that has made land contact and has added insult to injury. So what we're seeing is from 2022 to 2025, a series of years of massive grid failures. And the systems that be, the powers that be, will be trying to hold it together. But it won't matter because by then the crops are going to be failing in an epic fashion towards 2038, cycle 26, and the actual grand solar minimum bottom. The bottom of the next mega cycle of cold. The sun will shut down in such a way that it will cancel itself out. It's anyone's guess when the micronova will occur, but if the galactic wave arrives on schedule, it will be sometime in 2046. Could happen earlier. These are all educated guesses. But from the time the grid starts failing and the banks collapse, it will be Stone Age from then on. The losses to humanity will be epic. But you can survive and thrive if you know what's coming. And many of you that watch the channel know what's happening. I'm going to supply you with some papers on some scientific analysis of what happens when the magnetosphere wanes. Meta-analysis of cognitive performance by novel object recognition after proton and heavy ion exposure. You'll start to not understand what's going on. Some people will become more aggressive, just like bees, when they're exposed to low-frequency electromagnetic fields. There are hundreds of other papers to go look at on what happens and the effects of geomagnetic activity variations on the physiological and psychological state of functionality in healthy humans, according to the Azerbaijan studies and hundreds of other studies. I'll leave you links to them all. Saturate yourself in the facts. For those of you that reading is a deficit, just take a look at the graph. The human health aspects are obvious. Geomagnetic storm risks on the left happen with KP 5 and higher, especially in 7, 8, and 9. So check out this list if you're on it for events at 7, 8, and 9, which can be predicted up to a week or a month in advance. Cosmic ray risks happen at 0. There's your list. Solar flare risks. When a flare happens, we have 1 to 2 days advance warning for 7, 8, and 9. And there's your risks. Get to know the facts. Get to know how to read the KP index on Earth. I'll leave you links below. It's a live link, so it updates every 3 hours. We've been at KP 0 for 3, 6, 9 of the last 16 hours. Each of these bars represents a 3-hour period that's standardized on Earth. So you can easily look at it and understand what it's actually telling you if you have this chart. Now, the AGU published the role of geomagnetic field intensity in late quaternary evolution of humans and large mammals. In layman's terms, it means that the last 50,000 years in high resolution show that extinction is caused by the reduction in the magnetic field. Here's the lowest point of the magnetic field 40,000 years ago, and the highest rate of extinction. It's that simple. Exposure to galactic cosmic radiation compromises DNA repair and increases the potential for oncogenic chromosomal rearrangement in bronchial epithelial cells. That's a lot to digest. That means evolution is occurring on these cosmic ray spikes. Look at all the extinctions during these downward spikes, high cosmic ray spikes in the northern hemisphere. Look at them all. Look at the rate of extinction at the peak. Up, up, and away, and down. There's a direct connection. Exposure to galactic cosmic rays rearranges DNA. That's what that paper should say. Magnetic storms affect humans as well as telecommunications. Now let's talk about the grid. We're talking about human health and the grid and you preparing. When these events occur, we're going to need to be underground in safety for periods of time. When the magnetosphere is low during the day, the sun's UV, A, B, and C will be penetrating the Earth like never recorded. It will be a risk to go outside during the day, sometime during the 2030s, 2040s. It's a risk today, by the way. So here's your geomagnetic score index in human health. And remember it. Bookmark it. Print it. Whatever you can. So now you're probably sitting there and you know there's a direct connection between the magnetic field of Earth and your life. Why wouldn't it be? You're a biochemical bag of electrical water. That's it. You're an electrochemical bag of water, period. If it wasn't for your magnetosphere on your own body, you would be dead. The heart is simply a regulator of the field, pumping that fluid through your body, which oxygenates your blood and keeps you alive. You're a biological servo. You're a biological machine. You're a biological machine. You are a thermonuclear reactor of biology fed from source, which is not you. It's the universe. Without the electricity flowing through everything, you would not be alive. Your brain would not have consciousness, and it would not be receiving the information from the universe, which, by the way, is not you. It's everything. But your ego gets in the way, unfortunately. Now, the higher yugas and the unfolding of human potential is another thing. But thankfully, this cosmogenic change will allow millions of people to experience the shift that I and many others have already taken, which is access to the higher knowledge in the universe, and that we are all one, we are all powered by the same source, and we've all been recycled infinite amounts of times. It's almost laughable how important we think we are. Now, let's get into more of the harmonics of the Schumann resonance. Here's the Schumann resonance today. How will that change as the magnetosphere wanes? And what actually is it? I know a lot of you are relenting to figure out what's actually going on, but I implore you to read this. Believe it or not, the Earth behaves as an enormous electric circuit with a bunch of electrical, biological entities on Earth called animals and humans, plants and other things. And the atmosphere is actually a weak conductor. And when the magnetosphere changes, huge things change to humans and the Earth. All biological life is electric. And our planet has a plasma core. If you want to survive to see the big event, and you're older or you're infirmed, you need to know about the geomagnetic score, the KP index, and how it affects human health. This chart is the easiest way to understand it. Or you could dive into almost 400 professional papers on the topic. But the simple way to look at it is in this simple timeline to destruction, which I'm going to deconstruct for you now. You're alive now. It's about to be the new year. In less than 2 years, the grid will start to fail as we enter cycle 25 and the sun wakes up. We are in an extended period of drought for X flares. They typically happen every year, but we are in a major deficit, and there will be another one, and it will be Earth-facing within the next 5 years, based on statistics. And based on what we saw 5 years ago and recently, the magnetosphere is allowing small perturbations from the sun to affect the grid in big ways. So when a big flare comes, the grid will fry. There's no question about it. And that will be the Stone Age for people in that region. People will starve, people will be desperate, and it will be a horrible situation. But those that are prepared with security and food will handle it. Now, this is going to extend for a long period, all the way to the big event. So there's not much time to get ready, because from this time forward, it's a nightmare. And then the grand solar minimum hits, and there's no way to grow food outside. Think about the people that will suffer. It will be devastating. But we now know the facts. Proper prior planning prevents piss-poor performance as we enter the future. Love is the answer, always. You can change the world by transforming yourself. Attitudes and problems can be left at the door. Be safe. We love you.